It is very difficult, to be the CEO and the person who's taping boxes to get out the Amazon orders at the end of the night. And I've done both. And you have to do both simultaneously. And you have to say, you can almost break down your day. You don't get to break down your day very well, but you need to mentally break down your day.
Welcome to Your Food Business Success. This podcast is for early stage entrepreneurs in the packaged food industry ready to finally turn that delicious idea into reality. I'm your host, Sari Kimball. I have guided hundreds of food brand founders to success as an industry expert and business coach, and it's gotta be fun. In this podcast, I share with you mindset tools to become a true entrepreneur and run your business like a boss. Interviews with industry experts to help you understand the business you are actually in, and food founder journeys so you can learn what worked and didn't work and not feel so alone in your own journey. Now let's jump in. Welcome everybody back to the podcast. You guys are in for a real treat today. Today I welcome Tim Bradley of Teatulia, and let me give you the quick bio here. He is the CEO of Teatulia, has more than 3 decades of experience in marketing, sales, and general management for CPG, otherwise consumer packaged good companies, including Procter & Gamble, SmithKline, Beecham, Open Road Snacks, and Rich Products. He's an entrepreneur at heart who has built a half dozen businesses, often from the ground up, to significant annual sales levels across multiple industries. Tim grew up on the East Coast and earned an economics degree from Hamilton College. I love that. I didn't know that. When he's not in the office, Tim is likely out enjoying the mountains, often with his loyal sidekick Topher, the chocolate lab. There he is. That's him in the video. I love it. Welcome, Tim. So great to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks, Sari. I appreciate it. I'm a big fan.
Yes, you're a fan, but I have to say, like, I had to tell him this. I have a little bit of a business crush on you.
Oh, really?
Don't worry, Karen doesn't need to get upset. Just when we start talking business, or when I hear you talking business to other people, I'm just like, oh. So I can just listen to you all day, but we are going to have a conversation, even though I could just call this the Tim Show.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much. The feeling is mutual.
I don't know. I was like really nervous to ask you to come on the podcast. I'm like, he's got a big job. He doesn't have time for this, but I finally got up the courage. So, all right, I want to go we'll start with the Wayback Machine. So we'll talk more about Teatulia towards the end here, but the Austin Powers Wayback Machine. Tell us about when you first started a business.
My very first business was actually a painting company. Did you know?
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, then maybe I'll be specific. Let's talk about your first CPG business.
Well, I'm gonna go on the intrapreneurial rather than entrepreneurial first.
Okay.
I was working for Rich Products, which is about a $2 billion now food business headquartered in Buffalo, New York. I got in this position where Rich Products at the time didn't have a warehouse club business, and warehouse clubs were pretty new still. In addition to Sam's and Costco and BJ's, which we all know, there were other sort of fledgling. So we started. A colleague of mine and I started. We pitched it to management. Hey, this is what we would need to start a warehouse club business. We did. And we grew that from 0 to 16 million in 1 year. And so they were pretty happy with that. And led to other opportunities. I actually ended up creating 2 or 3 more divisions within Rich Products. I would say that, the very first one, and I know we're going to talk about this, the very first one that we, sort of started and ran sort of entrepreneurially, not intra, really was the Rocky Mountain Popcorn, which became Open Road Snacks.
Okay. Amazing. Yes. So I love this. I actually probably don't even know the whole story. I just know like bits and pieces of it. So tell me why you got into popcorn, how this came about, and a little bit more about the launch and growth of it.
Well, usually I start with because I temporarily lost my mind. But
Fair.
I was coming off of, so at the time I had been married for 15 years to my lovely wife Karen, who is an accomplished CPG exec, in her own right. But at the time, she had taken some time off, and she was being not just she was being a full-time mom, which is great because we have two fantastic grown children who are our contribution to the world. Um, so she had taken a little time off, and I was coming off of a job in telecom, believe it or not. I was
Oh,
CFO of a telecom company. And that came to a natural conclusion when some investors came in and decided that they wanted the entire business, and they didn't need the executive, the C-suite.
yeah.
So I came off of that, and I had a pretty nice pretty nice little severance deal, and I started talking about like what I'm going to do. I did a little bit of consulting, sort of general sort of management consulting in the interim, but I was talking with my wife and said, I've always wanted to do my own business. Maybe after the next job or after the next job after that, we'll do it. And she looked at me without hesitating and said, "What the hell are you waiting for?"
Do it
So
now.
do it now. So a week later, I found myself meeting with a friend who is a lawyer who specialized in small business acquisitions, asking him, "What does this process look like?" And 6 months later, after vetting, a bunch of businesses ranging from office furniture to a lot of other things, we ended up buying a very small business called Rocky Mountain Popcorn. And the reason that we fell in love with that business wasn't because it had a lot of revenue. It had sub 300,000 in revenue. It had some revenue, had some distribution, but we loved the product. And we thought we can work with this. It had a long way to go in a lot of areas. In fact, we at the time didn't have any idea how far it had to go. Um, and Karen
Good
came
to
up.
have a little bit of denial and
Well,
not know everything. Right?
if you start or acquire a small business, you are going to get a lot of surprises, and I can give you a long list of the surprises that we got, but that's probably for another whole day. In any case, just to sort of give you the sort of the arc of the story, we ran the business 10 years. We grew it from that sub 300,000 to over 6 million. Along the way, we you know, Rocky Mountain Popcorn remained our flagship product. But we actually morphed the company into Open Road Snacks to reflect that we were launching, potato chips and beef jerky and other, snack lines,
Yeah.
along the way. But it was 10 great years. Sometimes, edge of the seat, white knuckling, and sometimes these fantastic wins, and we really enjoyed it. And I'm happy to say, as you know, Sari, our marriage did survive that
I know we're gonna get into working with your spouse, but what was like, I mean, I'm sure there's many, but what was something that comes to mind as far as like a challenge of scaling? Because that's where a lot of my people are everyone I work with is sub 300. I say, like, we're going to get you to 300 and build that nice base of a platform, but you got to have that and then you can scale up. But like, what was one of the big challenges going from
Yeah,
sub?
we face, I think, the central challenge that every startup brand faces, and that is that in order to get distribution, the best way is to have distribution, and
The
and
chicken
and
or the
that's
egg?
if that seems like a conundrum, that's because it's a conundrum.
Yeah.
And so, we had very little distribution when we started, and we just literally just knocked on doors until our knuckles were bleeding, trying to get some distribution. And we did. We got eventually we decided that that we would be able to best innovate into the convenience store market. We had a snack, right?
Yeah.
And people snack in convenience stores. And the convenience store world, it looks like sort of a black box to those from the outside, and it was to us too. But we dove in and try to figure out how to work it. Who were the distributors? Who were the main customers? Who made the decisions? What was valuable to the consumer looking for a quick, convenient snack. And we started to innovate into those into and against those problems that we identified, and one step at a time. And eventually, we got some distribution here and there, and little ones, and we were doing things like delivering product or UPSing product around. But eventually, we got into some distributors and caught a really big break when actually Karen, that's my wife, in a sales role, was able to get a big hit at a major national truck stop chain called Pilot, and it was a game changer from us. We literally, going from literally, I could show you the sales curve on a graph, and it just sort of goes like this, it goes like this. And this is the day we got Pilot, and then it went like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just because of Pilot, it was because Pilot forced distribution in McLean. And we with a lot of sort of hard work figured out who McLean's other customers were. Like, hey, we're in distribution.
Right.
Here's our story. And here's why this is an innovation in this particular section of the snack aisle. Take us on. And we started just sort of racking up win after win. But I wish I could tell you there was a formula for getting past that conundrum, right? The conundrum.
Well,
I don't have distribution and I want distribution.
yeah.
I can't get distribution unless I have distribution. That's a conundrum. There's not I wish there were a formula. There is a formula. It's called
formulas. You just kept knocking on doors and getting no's, and you didn't stop, right?
Exactly. I mean, another formula would be, have your rich uncle give you $25 million and just buy your way through it. But that wasn't an option for us. So the formula ends up being, knock on doors until, and by the way, and I also tell this to young entrepreneurs as well, and that is you need to do two things when you do knock on that door and they do say yes, even if it's a one store, right? Two things. You need to service the heck out of that store and keep them happy. And you need to show up. You need to be there. You need to you just make sure that there is no excuse for them, not being happy. But almost more importantly than that, you need to find a way to get to your consumers and solicit and then listen hard to their feedback. And when your customers speak, you need to just think of that as like an oracle and listen to it and act on it. Now you're going to get a lot of weird, one-offs from customers. I don't mean that. I was like, I need a pink nail polish. No, I don't. But what I do need is I need some honest feedback. And we made a lot of improvements based on that feedback, and it helped us grow and really kind of take off from there.
Yeah, I bet the product you started with was not what you ended up with. I don't know how things changed, but
although it's funny because one of the things that attracts us to the business, they had a previous to us, they had a really great caramel popcorn. It was fairly unique in the way it was made, and it was absolutely fabulous. But the one that I fell in love with was a jalapeno and white cheddar popcorn. And it's funny because just the other day I bumped into someone and said, "Hey, you're that Rocky Mountain popcorn guy, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What happened to that jalapeno white cheddar popcorn? That stuff was so good, I can't get it anymore." I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's a story for another day, but it's not available anymore. Sorry." But we did mostly what we did was we expanded on we did what everyone should do. We based on sales and customer feedback, we culled some items out of the line, and then we innovated into the line. We ended up with a churro popcorn, which is like brown sugar and cinnamon. And even though it doesn't sound so good, it is really, it was really.
Yeah.
We ended up with a Southwest red chili popcorn. We ended up with these sort of, and again, we thought these would play well into the market that we were playing in.
Hmm.
So we developed
Yeah.
them out
Kind of
there.
unique flavors beyond what is already in the C-suite stores. C-suite being the fancy industry word for convenience store or C stores, not C-suite, C stores. Yeah, convenience stores. A couple of things I heard that I want to um, interpret here are you guys chose a strategy and you constrained. You weren't trying, now this is pre like Amazon and e-commerce and stuff like that, but what I heard from there is like we decided to go convenience stores and like that's what we did. We like
Right.
really focused and we thought about packaging and flavors and everything, messaging, everything for that particular customer,
Right.
which is really key because what I see a lot of times is people are like, and now there's so many more options too, right? But like, I'm going to go e-commerce and I'm going to go farmers market and I'm going to go food service and I'm going to go convenience stores and I'm going to go grocery stores. And you just cannot do it all at once.
Focus, focus, focus. And it's so hard because you see these little opportunities. I was just talking to someone the other day about in business, and they were in this one area, and they said, and then we're going to innovate, and we're going to do small individual packages of this product to consumers online. And I said to this person, I said, just stop right there, right? But I'm going to give you the toughest love that you ever gotten right now. Don't do that. Do not do that. I said, you have not even really begun to tap this market, that isn't small individual packages to consumers. It is something else. And that thing has so much potential. You need to figure out what you can do to be successful in that area and
Yeah.
put this dream of like, because I think I can be successful on Amazon. Well, it's a lot harder than it looks, bro. Um,
Right. You don't just throw your stuff up
oh,
on Amazon. Like each channel requires significant resources of time and energy and money. And I think what happens is people just go a little bit with all of them and they don't actually like
right.
really see it all the way to the end. And
Yeah.
you are the king of constraint. You're like, no, 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 do not do that. You are not ready to introduce flavors or new sizes or new products. Like,
And it takes more than what you said. It takes experience. It takes knowledge of the class of trade. It takes everyone wants to believe that you can click your way to business, but business is still about relationships. It takes relationships within that focused channel that you think build those relationships, get known in that channel and build your knowledge and be successful in that channel. If you wake up one day and you say, I can't be successful in this channel, then I've got 10 questions for you. And none of them are what should you do beside that? They're all, how do we get at why
yeah.
it's not being successful to the extent that you want in that channel?
Yeah, and we'll talk about Teatulia and a pivot that you guys made here in a minute, but you don't change course lightly, and you do it with a lot of strategy. And I love that you are a CEO, and one of the things I talk to people a lot about is becoming the CEO of their business. And my next level program, Master Your Business, will be open shortly, and it's all about becoming the CEO. So we are talking to a legit big, you're kind of big time, even though you don't want, you're very humble. I mean, that's, I think, one of the biggest qualities of a CEO is to say, this is the strategy, this is the path, and we're going to see it all the way to the end. And we will only change course under,
And I'll just riff
serious
on that for one second.
evaluation.
It is
Yeah.
very difficult, to be the CEO and the person who's taping boxes to get out the Amazon orders at the end of the night. And I've done both. And you have to do both simultaneously. And you have to say, almost break down your day. You don't get to break down your day very well, but you need to mentally break down your day. I'm going to execute. I'm going to get what I need to get done. And then I'm going to spend some money where I step back and close the door, turn off the lights, whatever you need to do, step back and really think about, analyze, pull the data,
Yeah.
really try to figure out, like what's going on. And maybe that's not every day.
This is
Maybe
my
that's, maybe,
CEO hat that I
right,
give
put your
people,
CEO hat
right?
on.
Like,
But
like
then
it helps to like
that,
mentally
have
CEO.
have a hat. This is not my CEO hat. This is my dog hat, but I have a CEO hat. But the other thing is that um, find and snuggle up to, if you can, smart people who have been there, done that, and can offer that outside perspective. Because the other thing that's very difficult as you're, taping those boxes is to kind of pull back and have that perspective. But also, you may not have that experience where if you find someone that does, and you can very honestly tell them what's going on, that person can often turn around and say, have you thought about X? And you hadn't thought about X, right?
Right.
So find someone really smart and or someone really experienced, and put them on your advisory board and listen.
Yes. I love that. I want to do a podcast called Your Advisory Board. Who all needs to be on there? So that'll be coming up. All right, let's switch gears because I mean we could just do a whole episode alone on Rocky Mountain Popcorn, but you sold that business, right? Nice. And let's talk very quickly about working with your spouse because what I've gotten like I have a lot of people who do start businesses with their spouse to some level of engagement. Some are like 50-50, some are more, there's like a main person, but they're being supported and it's still a joint venture. So it's not easy. But you did it. You guys are still married and then you work together again. So you must have done something right. So what can you tell us about starting a business with your spouse and
And
some,
we still hold hands at the movie theater.
yeah.
Um, so, so it's even better. What I can tell you is that the first thing I'll tell you may be a little bit controversial, and that is it isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
Not everyone has a kind of relationship that that can withstand the pressures of operating a business because the pressure is tremendous. And so you have to have a rock solid relationship, number one. Number two, I think that it's important that you each bring something to it. Okay. And like if I think about my 15 closest friends, and I stand back and say, who would be successful at running a business? These couple, they're all couples.
Okay.
Um, who would be successful? Out of the 15, right? I would be very lucky to identify one. Now I know that, and I also know because we've done it, and like attracts like, that there are many people out there who run very successful businesses, spouses. I admire them, but I can tell you that it's kind of a 1% thing, like not in terms of wealth, but just in terms of like who's like suited to do
Yeah.
this. And then it's be helpful to have some sort of rules of thumb. And I'll kind of tick down some of the most top of mind come for me. And one, I think the most important thing is always delineate who's doing what. You can't both do it all. And by the way, it doesn't have to be forever delineation. Karen and I changed that delineation, not intentionally, but just naturally. We changed that delineation probably at least every couple of years, maybe more often. If there were some times where I'd be running marketing and Karen would be doing sales, and there's times when I'd be managing the sales department and she'd be doing marketing. I pretty much consistently did operations and finance, but you talk about it and be open and like understand, like, okay, and when there's a change, be clear about it and communicate to the rest of the organization. Okay, from this day forward, we're going to make a change, and this is just as any business would do. But
Yeah.
because you're married or your partners, you don't always do that, right? You got to be like, okay, group, bring it in. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to change, and now Karen's going to be doing this, and I'm going to be doing that. And so that so your organization understands, because they see you as a blob. You're a married blob. They don't necessarily distinguish between you. So you have to do that distinction for them. So number one, always delineate, well, who's got what. Number two, be clear about how decisions are made and what decisions are made and when, and what are the rules around making decisions. And just in our case, we had, key decisions, strategic decisions, product decisions. Those had to be mutual, and they had to be we had to be unanimous about those. And all the way down to, how much money could you cut a PO for without talking to, the other one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and everything in between. So just be really clear about that. And then the third one's a little bit of a lifestyle thing. And I will tell you, we were the first ones to violate this. And we did so often, to the extent that our kids would sometimes look at us, and our kids, by the way, were in elementary school when we started, and were high school when we were, they were out of high school when we were done. But the most common plea from our children at that point was, "Mom, Dad, can you please stop talking about work?" And it brings home the hope to this rule, which is you gotta turn it off. You have to have your own things outside the business. Like, each of you have your own things. You have to have common, if you have a family things or couple things outside the business. And you have to have, like, we're not talking about work now. When you go to bed at night,
Yeah.
stop. You want work.
So hard.
It's an obvious one, but we had many, many, many moments where we just kind of looked at each other and said, "Hey, let's write this down and talk about it tomorrow when we're in the office, so that we can, enjoy our bottle of red wine and pasta meal, whatever."
Yeah, it's so tough because you're just in the moment and you're just like, oh, I have this idea and it's fun. But when you look over the long term of the health of the relationship, you start to see, like, yeah, the enjoyment and the fun and the thing, it just becomes all about work. And that over the long term, that can be really challenging for a relationship when it just becomes about one thing. So staying multidimensional.
Yeah.
It's a practice, and it takes like, no, we're not talking about this now. Write it down. We'll come back to it
Right.
when we're both in the office. And yeah, I mean, what I preach that whether you're in married or not, I mean, any kind of partnership,
Right.
having very clear roles. And I do teach in Master Your Business, like, one person still needs to be the CEO. That doesn't mean they're going to make all the decisions, but there does have to be somebody that, like, the buck stops here, and they're willing to take on that responsibility. But both people are, like, just making decisions, and you can, have conversations about what kind of decisions do we make together versus we've created a vision and a strategy, and I trust you to go execute those things that you're good at, that we've already decided that you're going to do.
That is absolutely that's 100% true, because on the one side, if you have one person making decisions without sort of the agreement of the other, I think you can imagine, obviously, the problems that are going to arise. But on the other side, if one of us ran across the office to the other one and asked about every single thing that we possibly did, then we would never have gotten anywhere. So that's why you have to have this structure.
And just like in a marriage or any friendship or something, like, the person may not do it the way that you would do it, right? Like, you may not load the dishwasher the way Karen would like you to load the dishwasher, but do you get it done? Yes, right? And so giving each other the freedom, like, I think that's where the biggest strife comes in, when each other has an opinion about how you should do it, instead of saying, here's the result we want to create, and here's some ideas of how we could get there, but then you be you, right? You do your way and go get it done. And I'm here to talk about ideas and all of that, but I think there can be a lot of criticism and resentment, that, like, the stuff
Yeah.
that can happen.
No, and by the way, so that brings up another thing that's really important. What you just said is tremendously important, and the way that comes out is to have sort of clear and measurable goals and milestones. Say,
Yes.
We're going to do this. We're not going to say how we're going to do this. If we want to brainstorm around that, that's fine.
Yeah.
But we're going to say, this is going to be the result, and this is when we're going to measure it. and it can be awkward as a couple. So it can be. It's tremendously awkward to say, okay, well, it's the end of the quarter. How'd you do on that goal of getting, 100 new stores? Um, and because it like that accountability has, a dynamic in your personal like couple relationship or even your business partner relationship
Yeah.
that you just have to get over. You have to acknowledge that we've got these goals. We're going to hit some, we're going to not. And how you react to it, especially the not hitting it, is really important. But that's another topic. The main point is you have to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. And to your point, don't focus on how that other partner is going to accomplish what they're going to accomplish. Focus on this is when we're going to measure it, and this is what we expect. And at that time, if you've fallen short, the conversation isn't, well, you're an idiot. You should have made it. The conversation is, let's talk about why. Let's talk about what we need to do. Do we need to change the goal? Do we need to change the strategy? Do we need to change the tactic? Do we need to put more resources on it? What's going on? Because you lived it. You are the one who is in it. You would know best.
Yeah.
And be honest with each other here. You know best like how it is that we do want to accomplish it, or are we focused on the wrong thing? We need to change.
Right. Right. It's just like, yeah, it's like, okay, you go write the emails, you go do your thing, you post on social media, but like what happens is like, let's say you're like micromanaging Karen and you're like, you shouldn't have said it that way, or I wouldn't have written that email that way, or I wouldn't have done that. And like, you got your own job to do. So I think it's about creating that trust and those boundaries and saying, here's where I need input and here's where I don't. And I trust you. And like, we're both working for the same goal and the outcome's really clear what we're trying to create.
And I was just in addition to that, like even before you start as a couple getting into a business, I would say that you both have to be equally passionate about the business and its success.
Mm-hmm.
The recipe for disaster here is to have, an asynchronous relationship in terms of like, I am all about this business and Karen's just doing it to like fill up her days. That is not going to work.
Right.
Because then it very much develops into this employee-employer relationship. And those tend to be even more difficult to manage, as a couple. There's just a lot of dynamics there that can go off the rails pretty hard.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're
Yeah.
both like equally passionate and equally, contributory towards the business, that is going to be the way you're going to get to the promised land.
I love that. Okay, so after you sold Rocky Mountain Popcorn, I don't think you landed at Teatulia next. I think you went to a couple different.
No, I did actually.
Oh, you did? You've been at Teatulia since then. Okay. I did not know that. I'm learning all sorts of new things about you, Tim. So, all right, so you sold the business and then you came on to Teatulia. And why don't you tell us a little bit about Teatulia? It was so fun to meet you originally because I'm like this was a tea we always had in our house. So it was fun to be like, yeah, so it's been a staple, but
business, I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Yeah. So I got to Teatulia the old-fashioned way. I was recruited. One of my board members with Open Road Snacks called me and said, "Hey, I know this guy that's doing a search on it." And it happened to be a guy. It was actually a woman-run business. The CEO was Linda Apple-Lipsius at the time. But that's how I got there. So I walked in the door and she literally, I'm gonna say a mild cuss word here because I'm just gonna quote Linda. She said, "This is pretty much a shit show, and we brought you to be the adult in the room for all of us,
yes.
including her." And I walked in, and literally, I'm not kidding you. There wasn't, and this is at the time it was around $1 million business, but it didn't. It wasn't a price list. The company didn't know its own cost of goods. Literally, didn't know its cost of goods. Goes on down from like I'm like, well, so what are the accounts payables? Well, we don't know.
What's the cash flow? We don't know.
Yeah.
The
So
forecast.
on the one hand, like some people would say, "Oh my God, that's scary." Well, no, it's not, because the thing is that, I knew what those things looked like, right? And I knew how to do two things: coach up those who were capable, of contributing on that level. This is how this is what we need. We need to be able to do this, no matter what the task was. And if we can talk about how you're going to do it, but we're mostly going to talk about the goal. And if you need some help along the way, I probably have seen it. Come and talk to me, and we'll talk about the how. But mostly it's the what. And so we just started tackling these whats. But the second thing is that there were some people in the organization that probably weren't cut out for being where they were. They were in the organization for the wrong reason or whatever. And I've probably spent well over 2 years kind of molding the team.
Yeah.
Some strategic, sort of gentle pushes out the door, but also some very strategic hires of people who I knew could come in and contribute at a high level to this business because they had been there and done that. And in some cases they hadn't been there and done that, but I saw in them what we needed. So that was sort of the lay of the land when I walked in the door. It's a funny story. So I walked in as chief operating officer, and there was a chief operating officer when I was interviewing. And during the interview, Linda had told me, "Well, we're going to get rid of this chief operating officer." And the night before I started, Linda called me and said, "We decided to pivot a little bit. We're not going to get rid of that chief operating officer. And also you two are going to share an office." So let me get this straight. You're going to replace this, it happened to be a guy, this guy with me, and also you're going to put me in his office. All right, let's go.
So did his title change, or were you
Yeah,
like,
he became a business development officer. And
okay.
in fact, the story ends very happily. He is still with the company. And mostly his efforts, my guidance, created a new business division for the company that became, in a way, its most successful and profitable business division. Is absolutely thriving today. I'm still proud to call him a colleague and a friend. As a matter of fact, just last night, he and I went to a happy hour just to kind of catch up and have a beer.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that took a lot of like letting go of his ego, and that's pretty cool. And I think it speaks a lot to your willingness to, coach up and be flexible, and yeah, a lot of humility too. So that's amazing. So, I mean, that had to be very, that's entrepreneurial, where you see a big mess and you're like, cool, I got to come in and clean it up and do it my way, and, do what I do best. So that had to be a lot of fun to come in there and do that. So you've been at Teatulia now for how long?
For 7 years.
Okay.
Last month.
So what I want to talk about, because I mean, there's so many directions. It's such a cool company. You guys should definitely go check it out. I know you have a little offer for us too, but so you guys you were doing traditional retail tea bags, and I think you also have a ready to drink product as well, or you brought that in at some point. But now maybe it's 2 years ago, but you guys made a pretty big pivot, and we were talking earlier in the podcast about like you pick a strategy and you go all in and you don't change. But then sometimes you do change, but you don't do it just haphazardly.
Right.
And I should say, Karen, at some point, I'm not sure when she came over to Teatulia, was also working there as your sales VP or salesperson, right?
Yeah, she was. So just that story real quick. When we sold the business, the purchasers actually required Karen, who was actually running sales at that time, to continue on with the business. So she had a 2-year contract. And it was, in a lot of ways, maybe one of the most difficult, but also enlightening phases of her career. For a lot of reasons. But when she was released off of that contract, we, Teatulia, also found ourselves at a little bit of a crossroads where we had struggled and failed to find the right sales person to head up the retail sales.
Yeah.
Retail sales in a small but growing business, CPG business specifically, is a really interesting, hard hire. You want someone who has this gold-plated resume, and who's been there and done that and can pick up the phone and call the Kroger buyer or whatever, right? But you find that like if you go hire someone from Nestle, there it's very difficult to find that person who can actually translate their skills into a small entrepreneurial environment. I used to say to to candidates, like you're going to need to call Kroger one day, and the next day you're going to need to come in and make the coffee,
Yeah.
because that's what we do. And that's not the environment for everyone. And I've had some really big failures in that. Hired someone who just didn't click in an entrepreneurial environment, and I've had some real successes. But the deal was, I knew that Karen had both of those qualities. She could pick up the phone and call the Kroger buyer, but she could also understand that, hey, I've got this big presentation tomorrow. I'm not going to just throw it at the marketing department. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and actually get it done, maybe with their help, but get it
Yeah.
done. She understood that, and she was really successful for a brief time in that role.
Amazing. She made the tea, not the coffee.
We still drink coffee. It's okay.
Yeah. All right. So Karen eventually came over, but yeah, let's talk about the pivot that you guys made, because you were in major retail and you expanded into ready to drink as well. So kind of set the scene and then how you made the decision to do what you did.
To go into ready to drink, or
No, as you pivoted out of retail.
pivot out of retail. Well, the retail decision, I can make it sound like the most obvious decision that was ever made, but I can tell you that it's also probably the most difficult, because when we traditionally think of CPG companies, we think of their value being tied up in their retail distribution, right? If you want an exit value, and the whole topic of exit is a tough one. So let's just pretend we're all really mature adults here, and we say, look, every entrepreneur has got to be thinking about exit in some way, right? It's like basically like purposely like bringing a child into the world to send them out for adoption. That's not the way we think. But it is, you have to think that way, even if you plan on running this business. It's
Even if you
like,
decide to run it, yeah, you still need a succession plan. You still you're not going to be there forever. So, and you want to set it up so that you aren't needed in
right,
the thick of it all the time either.
right. So in the context of exit value, the way we think about exit value is it's tied up in your, the value of your brand is tied up in, your customer awareness and satisfaction. And the way people traditionally think about that is, in terms of retail distribution. So on the one hand, right, so the obvious part of the decision, that is not it. The obvious part of the decision is that, when we had one of those moments where we stepped back and said, let's get strategic and let's really look at the business. And we had, now fast forward several years, we had the ability not only to know what our cost of goods was, but we had the ability to understand what the P&L was by business line, and by product, and by a lot of other things. And in one of those moments where we're like, let's step back and take a look at the long term, we started looking at the retail P&L and realized that we were expending over 80% of our of our financial resources on a business line that had not been able to achieve the scale to get profitable, and was consuming all of these company resources. And we started thinking about, imagine a world in which we could pivot those resources to the other lines of business that were successful. Were we able to make the case for that strongly enough that we were willing to walk away from that perceived value being tied up in retail only? And eventually, with about 6 months worth of meetings, literally at the board level and with outside advisors and everyone else, we were able to come to the conclusion. And I was a driver here, even though my wife headed up that line of business. Don't tell her. But I was a driver, like we need to think differently. We need to get out of retail. And we need to operate this company. We need to create that brand value in ways that don't involve, us paying, 75% of our revenue in deductions to these distributors that are very difficult to make money with, especially at the scale that our retail operation was at. So made that decision, and it was a difficult one. And then I had to sit down and have a conversation with my wife that I never want to have again.
You had to let her go. And she's amazing. And she has a brand, she has a different job and she's
Yeah,
crushing it. So
she's successful despite my best efforts.
so we don't need to worry about it. She's amazing. One day I'll have her on too. She's awesome. Um, a couple of things I heard there. I mean, that plays out as the classic 80/20 rule, right? It's like 80% of our resources are going into this. That's probably not even providing 20% of our profit, right? And I mean, maybe revenue, but not profit. So that's a really big deal. And we talk a lot about that in Master Your Business of like, what's that 80, where are you putting resources and what if you restructured that and so that we got a better return on
Right.
investment. I am sure some people, and I have some clients that I'm like, I just really hope that they heard this part
Mhm.
that I don't know how many millions of dollars, because I'm sure you've grown it past a $1 million mark at this point.
Yeah.
But you were in retail, you had all the fancy Whole Foods and Natural Grocers and Kroger and all the places, and that's a big ego boost. But you were not very profitable in that.
Right. And especially the retail business. And by the way, I also think you brought, I'll just riff on your ego thing. And that is that it's also very difficult. So I was in a way an impartial third party at this point still. Like I didn't found this company.
Sure.
I care very, very, very deeply about this company. It is now, I believe it is, part of my soul, right? But walking in from the outside, I had the luxury of being able to sort of separate the ego of being able to see your tea canisters in the Kroger aisle or the Whole Foods aisle or whatever, from the reality of the business. And that was the business, despite, at that point, despite, I want to say it was like 10 years of effort, really hadn't made significant strides in retail despite having, Kroger and Safeway and Whole Foods and Natural Grocers and Sprouts and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But we weren't getting to scale that allowed us to get to profitability, and that's very hard for a founder to see or admit, right? And a little easier for, a guy like me. So we made the tough call and we went forward from there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I do as a coach is try to offer that third party and I can see the issues, right? Because you're so close to it when you're the founder. You're like, but this is my baby and I'm on these shelves and
No.
but,
And
right?
by the way, I was just saying, this is not the right answer for everyone. I would not, I would say be very, very, very careful about just saying, well, we need to get out of retail. No, no, no,
No, no, no.
no,
That's
no.
not the message I want
Like,
people
no,
to get.
you need to do what's right for your business.
Yes.
And if that involves like a really tough decision like that, you need to be unafraid, but also you need to have done the work to be absolutely sure that it's the right decision for your business. We should almost, we talk about this, making a tough decision and divorce that from being in retail or not being in retail.
Right.
I'm certainly not advocating for that. I think that many fledgling CPG businesses have to be in retail.
Yeah. And you guys built a brand there, right? Like you built customer loyalty, built customer awareness. It wasn't even a wrong thing to be in retail, to start there, to be
No.
growing in there, but you gave it a significant amount of time. And and then when you actually did the factual data, I've got to look at the numbers, and you had enough history to evaluate it. And then and you said it took you 6 months and lots of conversation and lots of discussion. It wasn't like just an overnight decision. And And this could be somebody saying, no, I'm going to double down in retail, but I'm going to get out Amazon, or I'm going to get out of food service because I'm splitting up my resources too much. I actually need to go all in on retail and get rid of food service. Like it could go any, no, we want you guys to evaluate your business.
Yeah, you just nailed that.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. In fact, we also had the benefit of we had these. So we're internationally owned. Our founders are from Bangladesh, and so when we were in the throes of this decision, we were also working with this international consulting group out of Sri Lanka and Dubai and like all these India and all these wild places. And this was a topic of conversation with them for a long time. And those guys could bring to bear analytical resources that we didn't easily have.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty good with an Excel spreadsheet, but it has its limitations. So we had the benefit of some
Yeah, you brought in
heavy
third
duty
parties.
and some really big, like talk about, perspective, like bring in someone from not even this country and you're going to get a lot of naive questions that have seemed kind of dumb, but you're at the end of the day, you're going to get a lot of perspective.
Yeah, it's actually sometimes better when I don't know people's business model too much because then I just ask questions, like kind of dumb questions, but it forces them to really think through their answers of like, why are we doing this? Why do we do it this way? So I know you joke like we're out of retail, but we're still in retail because it's a long process to actually.
It takes longer to get out than it took to get in, trust
So you might still be able to find Teatulia, but
me.
in grocery stores. But you really expanded into the food service, right? That was where you felt like to put the majority of your resources.
Well, and part of that decision-making process was that we had some real momentum in both food service and e-commerce. And when I
Yeah.
say food service, so food service, everyone thinks back of the house. It doesn't really help your brand because no one sees the brand except for the worker in the back taking it out of the box. Not true. There are ways to brand your product in food service, and we work really hard at that. Now it's not perfect. Not every Teatulia sale in food service is a branded sale, but a heck of a lot of ours are. So we get a
Yeah.
lot of sort of brand recognition, awareness out of that.
If
But
a
the other,
hotel or cafe is going to bring in a premium tea, they should be using the
right,
brand name.
right, yes, yes, but
They're
not
kind of
everyone. I mean,
dumb if they
if you
don't.
go to a restaurant and you just get, like a run-of-the-mill restaurant, you just get a tea. You don't always know or care or have the ability to make a decision as to what brand that tea is.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's that. But we also had some real momentum going in e-commerce. So when I
Mm.
walked in the door in 2017, there was no Amazon business and nothing other than just a few $1,000s a month of sales on teatulia.com, our own website. And my first reaction was, you don't what? So I grabbed one of this bright, young, talented person from the organization, said, "We're going to get back into Amazon, and you are going to make a name for yourself doing this." And she looked at me and she said, "What the hell took you so long to realize that?" And mind you, this was like month number 2, so the
Yeah.
question was a little tongue in cheek, but um, it took us a long time. The Amazon, I call it the Amazon flywheel because you got to start turning it very, 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 very slowly and just work at it every day. And
Yeah.
then the Amazon flywheel for us was starting to turn. And so we just refocused all those resources that we have been putting into retail into our food service line of business and our e-commerce business. And I'm happy to say that what we lost the first year in retail revenue, we more than made up for with food service and e-commerce growth, probably like 2 times over. So we were running about a 30% compound annual growth rate when we made that decision. And I'm happy to say that when we made that decision, we were able to not only maintain but increase that compound annual growth rate, despite losing that big chunk of revenue
Yeah.
in retail, which wasn't profitable but was revenue.
Right. And that's the thing is separating the top line revenue from the net is like, because we talk a lot in this industry about top line revenue because it's the fun, sexy number, but like the CEO is doing the work of understanding what's the, what's the actual profit, the bottom line.
Yeah.
And retail is expensive, and we're not going to go into all of it, but yeah, you mentioned deductions, I mean, distribution, the just so there's just so, promotions that you have to do. There's so much, right? They call it death by a thousand cuts in the retail industry. And this is why. And you have to be very savvy. And I know a lot of bigger brands that just simply look at it almost like a marketing expense, right? It's like, this is a way for us to be visible to people, but it's not a moneymaker. And I know that's
That's
shocking for people.
That's not a bad way of looking at it. In the convenience world, that analog would be travel. So like the Hudson Newses of the world, right?
Yeah.
You don't make any money with those guys. As a brand, no brand makes money. They take so much out of you that you don't make any money, but you get visibility. The most common way when I was with Open Road Snacks, most common way that people had heard of us was, oh, I saw you at Hudson News, or I saw you in the airport,
Oh,
in the
interesting.
airport store.
Which they're charging like $15 for a bag of popcorn. You would think.
No, and I don't know who's making all that money, but I'm telling you, the brands don't. It is effectively, it turns
Oh,
into like an advertising expense.
yeah.
And writ large, very hugely giant, retail could be looked at the same way. Now, I will also tell you that if you get to a certain scale, you need to run to a scale in retail. And when you kind of tip over the top of that, that scale point, whatever that is for you, then retail can be a tremendously good business. I'm not saying retail is a bad business. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
to get to that scale requires a lot of resources. And either you're getting to it and you have the resources. If if the answer to either of those questions is no, then you need to think hard. That's all.
Yeah, you got to do a lot of work to go get those resources, and takes takes so much more than just you as an individual. Like it's a
Yeah.
whole team. It's a big group that's all working for that one goal. So, yeah. Amazing, Tim. It's been so fun. Well, I know I think you wanted to offer a discount code for teatulia.com.
I do. I would love for your listeners to try our tea. We think we're by and large single sourced. We control our own organic tea garden in the north of Bangladesh, where we do great things, especially for the women in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh is a Muslim country. Without getting too politically loaded about it, advancing the cause of women's rights and women's economic position in society ends up being really important to us. We think it's healthy, and it has been healthy. We've been at it now for 20 years,
Yeah.
and we've done some really great things. So, if you want to do great things, and we do great things for the planet, our agriculture is completely regenerative, and we're an oxygen factory for the planet where there was a desert, which is fantastic. So, but the
Amazing.
most important thing is, like, you can buy with your heart, but it only works until it gets to your mouth, and then it's got to work. It's got to work in terms of this taste and performance. And I'm happy to say that most people who taste it do feel that way. So I'd love for your listeners to go out there and buy it after the sitting through my quick pitch, and use the promo code Food Business Success.
Great.
So there's a lot of S's in that. So, but it's
We can
one
shorten
word.
it down. You can just call it like
Yeah,
food biz.
well, I didn't. I want to, you got to get
Do the
some
whole
some.
thing. All
So
right.
put those three words together, all without punctuation or spaces. Food
I'll
Business
put it
Success,
in the show notes too.
and you get 30% off at teatulia.com. So go and try some really good tea.
Yeah, I think it's a good example of, yeah, a brand that's doing good in the world, but also you have to make money, right? It has to be a profitable company. You're not going to be around. You need to have a CEO at the helm, and every business needs a CEO that's looking after the financial bottom line, that's defining roles and responsibilities, that is always keeping people, reorienting them to the vision of where we're going.
As Linda said, you need an adult in the room.
Yes, exactly. And you might have to put on a hat. You might be all the things, but like putting on your CEO hat for at least a little bit in your
That's
business.
what I'm gonna go and get a CEO hat. I don't know what it looks like.
Oh, I should get it. Yeah, this is the one we give out.
That's fabulous. I might steal that idea.
Yeah, this is part of what we do. We got this is the maker hat, right? It's
Ah,
like you got like, yeah, you're gonna have to be the maker sometimes, but
yeah,
if you need to define, here's my maker hours, and then I'm gonna sometimes put on the CEO hat,
yeah.
right?
Got to get one of those. So mostly so that my team knows when I'm about to be serious. We have a lot of fun, but every now and then I got to go.
Maybe the
Stop for a
gold
second. It'd be
fedora is
helpful
not
if
the
I had a
right
hat to put
choice.
on to let them know, hey, this is.
I know you are such a great mentor. You are so giving with your time and give to a lot, we're in Colorado Food Works together, and you are so generous with mentoring early stage brands. So I'm sure you give out a lot of great advice, but is there anything you would leave us for our listeners around starting
Well,
or scaling their businesses?
yeah. Well, first of all, Sarah, thanks for having me. I wasn't kidding when I started off with I'm a huge admirer of yours as well. I'm one of the few of the proud that has and have read your book, and I think there's just a ton of wisdom in there, and you should all do it. But what I would say to to those out there who either have or are about to start a CPG business, a food business, whatever, go for it. I've spent a career in this space, and I've spent it with big companies. I've spent it with small companies, and my personality, my soul fits with that entrepreneurial, is aligned with that entrepreneurial. I will tell you, it's hard, and there's going to be hard days, and there's going to be failures, abject failures probably along the way.
Yes.
But it's worth it. And as you can see from my gray hair here, I shave off most of my beard because it's mostly gray now. But that I've survived this long and actually thrived. And I say go for it and go out there and put your whole heart and soul into it and make it happen.
Well, it's been such a pleasure, and that's it. We'll leave it there. But thank you, Tim, for joining us.
Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it.
What an amazing conversation that was with Tim. I want to thank him so much. And it was so fun. I did not expect it to go in that direction, but it makes total sense that we end up talking about what it means to be a CEO. And this is a topic that I love to talk about. It's something that I love to work with you all on. It's something I am passionate about because I see when people do not do this work, how they end up hating their businesses. They resent their businesses and they're burnt out. It is imperative if you are going to be part of the 20% of businesses that are still in business after 5 years, that you learn, and you can learn. It is a skill. It's not something you're born with. You don't need an MBA, but you do need to come and learn how to be a CEO. You need to build good, solid financial practices. You need to create visions and strategy and tactics and define roles for your organization. And you need to be able to step away from the working in your business to working on your business. You got to go and learn and get the hat. And you can't just go buy this on Amazon. I mean, you can, but you got to come do the work and then you earn the hat. Then you get to put on the CEO hat and really run your business like a business so that you can actually get the time freedom, the money freedom, and the joy, the excitement that you imagined when you started this business. That's what I want for you. If this is resonating, go apply for Master Your Business. Go to masteryourbiz.co and apply. Let's see if it's a good fit, and come and do this work with us. Your whole business will change for the better. All right, until next time, have an amazing week. The smartest thing you can do as an entrepreneur is to invest in a who to help you with the how, to speed up your journey and help you skip the line. When you are ready for more support and accountability to finally get this thing done, you can work with me in 2 ways. Get me all to yourself with one-on-one business coaching, or join Food Business Success, which includes membership inside Fuel, our community of food business founders that includes monthly live group coaching calls, and so much more. It's one of my favorite places to hang out, and I would love to see you there. Go to foodbizsuccess.com to start your journey towards your own food business success.